Bend Around the Wind by Skylaya. Chapter 3. In a galaxy far, far away. Andromeda! Andromeda was visible on the sky, and not just in a bright spot in the distance way. No, in the right-in-your-face covering the entire sky way. It's not like he had enormous hopes of getting away, but this messed up all his even remotely possible plans. The engineer in him couldn't help but wonder how fast the ship was they traveled with. Every other part of him was just too shocked to do anything but put one leg after another. His mind was still a bit slow, which almost never happened, so he assumed it was an after effect of his long sleep. He knew he had to think of something in a way of escaping, but what was there? He couldn't just run. There was nowhere to run. He was millions of light years away from Earth. The thought itself was too big to even think about it in detail. He was the first human who ever set foot in a different galaxy, as far as he knew, and he was walking towards horrible pain and eventual death. He would bet Magellan did not face situations like this. He looked at the frankly magnificent shape of Andromeda once more before he was dragged inside through a door, and he lost sight of it. Beautiful, truly. He took a large shaky breath. He was not getting away from here, was he? It definitely felt like it. His chest felt too tight again, but he swallowed and pushed down whatever emotion wanted to burst out. Not the time, not the place. He had to keep it together for as long as possible. Maybe later he would find a way. He just needed time. He could come up with something. He always did. He was too lost in his thoughts to pay attention to anything in front of him. They walked through another door, and the second it closed, his chain was tugged forward sharply. By the time he looked up again, Loki already had his own chains around one of the creature's neck. He twisted around, swift and graceful, and Loki heard the sickening sound of bones cracking as the alien's neck snapped. Loki pushed the dead weight off towards the other alien, who couldn't raise his weapon soon enough because he was holding Tony's chain. When the alien stumbled, the momentum dragged Tony along. He was just about to try and get out of his grasp when shouts filled the corridor as the doors opened on the far end. More aliens. Wonderful. Tony saw no point in fighting. They were outnumbered. He had no weapons, no protection, and he was chained. People said he didn't have any self-preservation instincts. Well, he was proving them wrong right now. He couldn't say the same about Loki. He fought alright, viciously. Sure, he was not as vulnerable as Tony, since he could take a beating from the Hulk, but this was downright stupid. In the end, they managed to subdue him, but boy, he dealt out some serious damage before that. By the time it was over, most of the aliens sported some sort of bleeding wound. Tony was pretty sure that if someone didn't want Loki delivered alive, these guys would have continued attacking him until he was dead. Instead, the Aesir was left bleeding and stumbling, but still defiantly glaring. It kind of made him wonder why Loki accepted his defeat on Earth so gracefully. The aliens shouted among themselves for a bit, then they continued their journey in a lot faster pace. Loki really had a talent for pissing off others. Tony just hoped it would not come back and bite him in the ass, although he really didn't know how things could be any worse. "Godling," said the dark figure the second Loki was tossed down onto the floor. Tony didn't see much of him, as he was still standing by the entrance between two beefy alien guards. At least someone besides Loki spoke English? Okay, that was strange, but he dismissed it for now, not a priority. Loki spat some blood on the floor, then got up to his knees. "You have been warned," the figure said. "And you have promised a formidable army, which was easily disposed by a handful of mortals. Who exactly broke their word?" Loki asked in a dark tone. The figure turned around. He looked different than their guards. Pale blue, almost white skin. Loki couldn't see his face because of his hood. Not that he wanted to. The six-fingered hands were creepy enough already. "You have failed," rasped the cloaked figure with finality. "And you will pay for it." "I do not fear you," Loki answered. One of the guards yanked on Loki's chains in answer, and the cloaked one took a few steps closer to the Aesir. "You will." Loki started laughing. It was a low and sharp sound, amused and dangerous at the same time, and also a little insane. "I will take great pleasure in tearing at your heart. You'll see it beating in my grasp as you scream. He spat at the alien towering over him. The other snarled and was right next to Loki in a blink, a long curved blade in his hand pressed to the god's mouth. If you did not have still things to tell us, I would cut your tongue out right here, godling. Despite the blade sitting on his lips, Loki smiled widely, not minding getting cut at the corner of his mouth at all. The two stared at one another for a few moments before the blade was drawn away. Take him out of my sight, the cloaked alien ordered in a hiss. This time Loki didn't put up a fight. Tony watched as he was dragged away with an impending sense of dread. When the door closed and Loki's tall figure was gone, Tony turned back only to startle finding the cloaked alien standing right in front of him. Weak, fragile, human, he spoke slowly, his face only a few inches away from Tony's. Tell me, how could one Midgardian man kill more of ours than he from yours? I'm more awesome, Tony answered. He was pretty sure that his voice came out confident and nonchalant enough. He mentally patted himself on the shoulder. You're certainly more effective, the alien answered. My master is pleased by efficiency. Tony kept his gaze even and his face as blank as possible. Tell us what weapon you used, he continued. Tony did his best not to react much. So that was what this was about. He should have thought of this. He should have known. He was most pleased with its strength. I destroyed your army and your boss is happy about it, Tony asked. It was a great tribute to his mistress, he answered in a theatrical tone, turning away and walking a few steps to the right. Tony had absolutely no idea what that was supposed to mean. Tell us about the weapon. Well, this was a familiar situation. No, we answered evenly. My master would reward you most handsomely, the other replied. No, Tony repeated. He could give you power and knowledge beyond your imagination. No, fool, he said, turning back towards Tony. We will get what we want. You will tell us. Telling the aliens who sent Loki to conquer the Earth how a nuclear weapon works. Yeah, right. That was very likely to happen. No, I won't. Yes, you will. He gestured with his hand and Tony was dragged away. They tossed him in a cell, unsurprisingly. Unlike the one on the ship, this one did not have beds. It didn't have anything, just bare walls and a very hard floor. His hands remained chained, but he was not tied to the wall. He counted himself lucky. Also, he was alone inside. Maybe they will keep him and Loki apart. He couldn't disagree with that one. Loki was just as likely to murder him as his captors, or even more so. The Aesir did not need anything from him. He spaced in the cell for quite some time. He counted that it was 17 feet long and 8 feet wide. The ceiling was too high and too dark to guess its height correctly. There was one deep hole in one corner that led into some sort of pipe. It didn't take long to realize what that was for. It was too narrow for anything else. Oh joy, the luxury of this place. This was worse than the cave. Much worse. He tried not to think about the last time he was captured, but it was hard not to. There was literally nothing inside that could help him come up with any new escape plans. Certainly not with any that would get him back to Earth. He wondered how they will try to persuade him to tell them about the nuke, but he had fairly good guesses. This was not his first rodeo, so to speak. He shivered, and it had nothing to do with the chill in the cell. He must have been alone for what felt like hours, not disturbed by anyone. It left him on edge, the uncertainty, which was probably why he was left like this. Then he finally heard someone opening the door, and he straightened up, turning towards whoever was coming. It was two of the guards, with a third standing in the door, not surprising. They were dragging Loki inside, which was a little bit unexpected. They tossed him down roughly. Loki just rolled over and laughed. His smile was wide, his teeth bloody. He was shackled at his wrists, just like Tony, but one of the guards also chained him to the wall. Both guards had some large cuts on them, and the one standing at the door had so much blood on his face that it was dripping down to his armor. Loki must have lashed out again. Once Loki was chained up, all three of the aliens left, and Tony was left standing and staring at the still laughing god. Loki slid closer to the wall and leaned next to it. His laugh quieted down, and he finally turned his gaze at Tony. "Sark, why so serious?" he added with a smile. "Oh, I don't know." Tony spoke in all his frustration, all his powerlessness, his anger, and everything else he tried to keep in check very hard was boiling in him, wanting to burst out so badly. He didn't have the energy to hold it back. "How about the fact that I got punched in the face in my bedroom and I woke up months later right up in the Andromeda galaxy? Or maybe that it was the crazy asshole that tried to conquer my planet that dragged me into it. Or that I'm chained up in a hellhole because your creepy friends liked how I killed off an entire army. And on top of all of it, I have you insane fuck as my goddamn roommates." He turned away and took a few large breaths, trying to get his temper under control. He was so out of his depth here. How could he possibly end up like this in a place like this? How was this happening? How is he going to get out of this? How? After he felt like he could talk without shouting, he turned back towards Loki, who looked most definitely unimpressed by his outburst, which just pissed Tony off even more. "They want that weapon you used, don't they?" the Aesir asked after another few moments of silence. Tony contemplated ignoring him, but in the end decided against it. "Yes. This may sound peculiar coming from me, but I suggest you do not tell them what it was." Tony scoffed because, he needed Loki of all people to tell him that. "I won't," he said with a tone that made it obvious how idiotic it was to even suggest that he would even consider it. "Oh, good," Loki replied lightly, wiping some of the blood off his face. "I do not have to wring your neck just yet, then." Tony stared at him, his shoulders squared, his face even harder than a moment before. "Do not look so surprised, Iron Man," Loki said, his tone when he uttered the last part positively mocking. "You may be my enemy, but they are as well, and I do not want such a weapon in their possession." "Well, something we can agree upon. I think the world may be ending," Tony commented. "If it looks like even for a second that you are about to cooperate with them, I will kill you before you have time to utter a word." His piercing eyes locked on Tony's face in a very unnerving manner. "Got it." "Good." After that, they stayed quiet, neither of them too keen to speak a single word to the other again.